All right, so I want to talk a little bit about Heatmap. Heatmap is a really interesting, I think it's one of our most powerful ways to investigate data, especially when we're looking at a large set and we want to kind of narrow in on specific parts of that data. I think a heat map's really good. So a heat map is a way of basically seeing how well two things are, how well data is correlated. So we can look at this one, and basically what I'm doing is I'm taking this from the, this is from serial, right? So I'm just looking through the serial, and I look through all the columns to see which things are correlated, and we get a lot of information out of this pretty quickly. We're looking at values. When we do correlation, we're looking at either very strong, we can have positive and negative correlation, which is what I talk about up here. Positive correlation means like as one increases, the other one's going to increase. We'd expect to see something like as wealth increases, child mortality. Well, actually, so as a country's wealth increases, we might see that its average age should also increase. Those should be positively correlated. We're going to look and see how positive those are. We can also see something that's a negative correlation. So infant mortality rate and GDP should be inversely correlated, because as GDP goes up, the infant mortality rate should go down. So they're actually going to have like a negative correlation. As one goes up, the other goes down. Or we can find no correlation, basically where changing one value doesn't seem to have any kind of impact on the other. And this is a whole table of all of those correlations between all the different variables within our serial. I won't spend too much time on the serial. I'll see if there's anything really interesting. It does just provide a very clear, like color-coded thing in here, like potassium and fiber really clearly linked. There's a very strong correlation between those two, maybe from like whole grains within the cereal. We can also see some really strong negative correlations like sugar and rating, which is actually pretty interesting to me. Kind of curious about what rating means. Does this mean like average consumer rating? Is this like the doctor's rating of how healthy it is? Have to look through the data a little bit more to figure that out. And then we can also see things like, interesting, calories and rating is also negatively correlated. So looking for those really clear distinguishing things. We can find some interesting things about like when there isn't a correlation, which seems like there's not a correlation between vitamins and potassium, which is kind of interesting. You think if it's healthy in one way, it might be healthy in another. And then down here, I'm looking at different correlations. Actually, I narrowed this down a little bit. I thought this would be some interesting data to look at from our CIA factbook data. And we're looking down here, we're seeing just these. I took out these rows or these columns, and we're kind of finding the correlation between those two. And so we can see interesting things like the life expectancy at birth is negatively correlated with the total fertility rate. It's basically, which is kind of interesting because, I think there's a lot to think about on this. This might generate some questions for you, like why is it that as life expectancy goes up, fertility rate goes down? I think we see this in a lot of developed countries where fertility rate is generally decreasing as GDP goes up. I mean, it'd be interesting to look through some of these. I don't know if I have. This is real growth. Be interesting to also look at GDP. You might find some of the same things there. But just kind of like looking through this and finding some relationships that, that are either you'd expect to be there but aren't expected to be correlation, but there isn't, or where there's really strong positive or negative correlations in there. So there's a lot of interesting things that we could look at within this, and it could also, it's not designed to provide us some answers, but it is provided a chance to like look at the full data and see what we can get out of it.